You're listening to Hooked on Creek, a podcast celebrating the music, history, and fans of the legendary jam band Max Creek. I am your host, Corey Johnson, and this is episode 66.
Well, come on, you survivors, you warriors all, you souls of breath impervious to pain. Sit down at my table with your backs to my wall, and tell my time your stories, take your claim.
Welcome back to Hooked on Creek. I have an incredible episode lined up for you, so thank you for joining me. While I often focus on the magic happening on the stage at a Max Creek show, there is an entire world of cat wrangling, technical innovation, and sheer grit happening just out of view. In this episode, I'm joined by Mike Maresca, the longtime tour manager and monitor engineer for Max Creek. Since joining the crew in 2004, Mike has been an essential part of the band's live experiences, ensuring the band members get on stage on time and that they're happy with the sound they each hear during their performance. In our conversation, Mike talks about his early experiences with Max Creek at the Living Room in Providence, Rhode Island, and how he eventually started working for the band. Mike provides a behind-the-scenes look at the technical challenges of being the band's monitor engineer, the logistics involved with being their tour manager, and how he works with fellow crew member Steve Desjardins. We also talk about his perspectives on the Creek Freak energy in the crowd and the chemistry he sees between the band members on stage. I had a lot of fun talking with Mike, and I think you are really going to enjoy hearing how he helps make Max Creek's live shows possible. All right, now let's get started. Mike Maresca, welcome to Hooked on Creek.
Thanks, Corey. Glad to be here.
Well, Mike, to kick things off, I would like you to introduce yourself by telling me your role or the different hats you wear supporting Max Creek.
Yeah, that's fine. Currently, I'm their tour manager and monitor engineer. So basically, I make sure the band gets on stage and that once they're on stage, they're happy with their sound, what they're hearing.
Yeah. How did you first get introduced to Max Creek? What were the chain of events that brought you to this band?
Bong hits and beer at the Living Room. So back in my days at URI, I did a radio show called Kind Sounds. Me and my buddy Grizzly Aaron there. We did that for a bunch of years at URI. And then towards the end of our URI days, we reached out to Randy over at the Living Room, and we were like, yo, we want to do a hippie night or a jam night, whatever you want to call it, on Wednesdays at your bar. And he's like, well, it's the middle of the summer, so wait until school starts. And, then we started doing, me and Aaron started Grizzly Magic Entertainment, I think is what we ended up calling it. And we would do Wednesday nights at the Living Room, and eventually met their road manager at the time, Eric, through that. And, Creek was playing at the Living Room way before we started doing Wednesday nights. So 100% through the Living Room is how I got hooked up with Max Creek.
The Living Room is a pretty legendary venue, I think, in Max Creek's history. What was that place like?
So I missed the first two Living Rooms. It was the famous Bubble. I think that was the one Fish opened up for Creek. And then there was the one across from the old Lupo's downtown. I only arrived to the behind the Dunkin' Donuts and Burger King Living Room, which was the third version of it. And, Randy was a great guy, super helpful to me and Aaron. When we stopped doing Wednesday nights, Aaron kept working there. And eventually Aaron and Greg, another sound guy at the Living Room, ended up opening up their own bar called The Parlor over on North Main Street in Providence with a third buddy of ours. So yeah, the Living Room's been instrumental into Rhode Island's music scene and, me getting a job with Max Creek.
So you were listening to Max Creek, though, before you ultimately started working with them. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I would go to the Living Room shows and just kind of bong hits and beer.
Right. Well, then what led to this opening for you to work with the band?
I was young and dumb, so I just worked for free. I had started helping out, putting up posters. When we were doing the Wednesday nights, we were trying to be promoters. So, we would help out with that. And then, through what we learned doing our own night, we tried to help Creek out a little bit too. So we'd help do some flyers when they were playing Providence, Creek in the living room, they helped each other out quite a bit. And both, towards the end, Creek kept the living room well, not totally kept it afloat. There were other bands who were just as important as Max Creek to the living room, if not more. But, when you could pull a few hundred people on a Wednesday night, and Creek would do just a random 6 weeks in a row on a Wednesday night to help the bar owner out, there's a lot of love between Randy and Max Creek and the staff and stuff. Even though most of the staff would make fun of Max Creek because most of the staff at the living room were more into hardcore or reggae, and there's a good mixture of laughter and love for the Max Creek coming out of the living room staff. But, you can't love every show you work or else you'd be unemployed.
So how do you get to be good at being a monitor engineer? Where did these skills come from for you?
Practice, just like any other job. When I was at the living room and we weren't making money as promoters, I realized that the sound guys always got paid. So I was like, Kevin and Greg, teach me how to do this shit. And they did. And then another buddy of mine at the time worked at Lupo's, and he got me an internship there. So for a while, I worked for cheap pay and free. So instead of going to school, I just kind of jumped in and learned on the fly, which is good and bad. When I was talking to Scott about this the other day, how I ended up doing monitors, and monitors are what the band hears. So there's me and Steve. Steve's our front of house guy. So you guys in the audience listen to what Steve does. So when it sounds really good, that's Steve. You don't hear what I do unless it sounds bad. If you hear a squeal or some fucked up noise, usually that's me. So we try to eliminate those noises. And some shows are more successful than others depending on the gear. So learning how to do sound in the living room was like trial by fire. On average, we were fixing something or taking apart some speaker before the show at 2 p.m, keeping it going. And it was a lot of fun. And we was talking to Maresca about this, and he's like, yeah, I remember encouraging you, being like, yeah, monitors, you can figure it out. You'll be fine. I guess that took it to heart. So
I don't know much about the live stage setup and monitors, but my basic understanding, right, is that there are maybe usually two kind of setups, right? The floor wedges or the in-ear monitors. Is that right?
Yep.
What are sort of the pros and cons, or how does a band navigate those choices?
But usually it's by financials. So most bands don't start out with in-ears. It's just easier to use whatever the club has. I always joke, if you're a singer in a band, you should at least have your own microphone. But when you start out, you're using whatever smelly ass microphone the club has that's been spit on by 100 different people. And you start with what you got. And then sometimes people don't want to change, man. Musicians and people in general are creatures of habit. So once they get used to something, they might not want to change. One thing I've noticed with Creek is they are somewhat willing to try new things. I think right now, Mark, John, and Bill all use in-ears. Scott uses them in the Mike Gordon band, but doesn't for some reason in Creek. And Jay, he's just on a monitor wedge. So pros and cons are in-ears sound clearer. You can hear your pitch of your voice better. The cons are you're using a wireless kit, and wireless can cut out. Everybody's had their Wi-Fi cut out on their computer at some point. Same thing happens to wireless mics and wireless in-ear mixes on stage. And monitor wedges are louder. You don't have your ears blocked up, so you get more of a natural feel. Whereas a lot of people who use in-ears tend to put like a microphone pointed at the audience so they can have a little ambient noise. I've never actually worn in-ears because I'm the monitor guy. You have whatever the club that we're playing has, whether it's my headphones or sometimes I have a Q Edge, which in an ideal world is exactly the same speaker that the band is using, so that I can listen to each person's mix. They don't all take the same thing in their monitor wedge. Everybody's got their own little desire of what they want to listen to more than other instruments.
Is it different or challenging when you have like the dual percussion drums set up on stage to get that mix right so people can hear through everything? Or
I don't want to say it's challenging. You get better with your job the more you do it. Working at clubs, the living room on a random sound night, you would have 5 different bands in 2 hours. So, your first set and set break for a Max Creek show, I just did 5 bands on another type of show. So it all adds up. And working with the same band, it gets easier because you're familiar. It's the same setup. We use a good amount of the same microphones at every show. Sometimes it's like, I mean, how many times have I played the Met Cafe? You kind of know what you're getting to when you go back to some of the hometown venues.
So what year was it when you first started working with the band?
2004.
Since 2004 to today, I mean, were you seeing different challenges?
I mean, shit, back then, my first show at the living room with the band was the monitor console had missing channel faders and with some duct tape holding some shit together. So that was, the challenges of that room was just getting the shit to work. So, I mean, I was going from analog to digital. So you kind of have to keep up.
Yeah, it's interesting. Your timeline in supporting the band and kind of maybe in the live music scene, you've been a witness to this transition to the digital side.
Oh, yeah. I like to have a monitor console, which is a physical desk. But for when I'm setting up before the show, I like an iPad where I can walk around, stand in front of the monitor wedge, check the cables as I walk around the stage. Steve, our front of house guy, he's different. He barely uses an iPad. He knows how. He just, everybody's got their own little thing. And, even one of the first things I learned when I was doing sound, I guess I didn't learn it. Somebody told me. They said, there's about 1,000 different ways you can do the same shit correctly. So, what works for one person doesn't work for another in live sound, and you can still end up with the end result of a good mix or a good stage sound. And Steve, luckily for him at front of house, he can kind of hear the changes he's making because the speakers are pointed at him. My speakers aren't pointed anywhere near my direction. So when I make a change, if I'm not listening to it on my headphones or I don't have a cue edge, I have no clue if it's still feeding back, I can tell I didn't fix the problem.
How are the band members communicating with you on stage? Is it just by line of sight?
I've had Bill throw a drumstick at me once or twice. Luckily, he missed my kid who was standing behind me, so that was good. Nobody got hurt that day. Definitely yelling. And then most of the time, most of my job is to just look at the band. Spend a lot of time looking at those ugly bastards. And that's literally my job. If they need something, I'm supposed to be paying attention. So I don't try not to talk to people during the show, because then if I'm not paying attention, I'm not doing my job. And they can see it. I'm right there. Hence the throwing a drumstick.
Well, you'd mentioned you're also a tour manager. What does that all encompass? What does that mean?
Advancing with the show to make sure they have what we need sound-wise. Make sure all the brown M&Ms are taken out of the hospitality rider. What time we show up, if we get hotels, who's driving who, are we rehearsing, are we sound checking, is so-and-so going to be late? Everybody go to the bathroom, good, get the hell on stage. Settling up at the end of the night, it's the cat wrangling portion. But, when it's a really long set break, it's because I'm not too motivated to make them go back on stage quicker. All those 40-minute set breaks, you can thank me. And then if it's 20 minutes, you can also thank me. Some shows it's not as important to get the band back on stage quick. Other shows it matters. Depends on the venue and the scene, and the curfew.
Give me an example of when things go well or when things don't go great.
So part of my job in advancing is setting up. So I'll advance the show and be like, hey, we need a monitor desk. This is what the band likes. This is what we want. Yeah, we'll set it up. It'll be ready for you during the day of the show. And I show up to the venue. Monitor desk is not set up. And the sound guy goes, I'm going to set it up in the half an hour between set change. And I just look at him and go, you just fucked my whole day. That's not physically going to happen. I've definitely had that happen a couple times. Where the guys overestimate their knowledge and abilities. Everybody makes mistakes. But that mistake is just something that's avoidable by setting it up in the morning when you have time. So that's definitely gone wrong. Speakers not working has also gone wrong.
Are the different venues more or less accommodating to you, or maybe it's the management or the owner of the venue?
At this point, 55 years, the guys kind of know what to stay away from and what not to. We definitely play some new venues. We just played that place in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, 3S Art Space. That was a new venue. And we played the Shea Theater as well. So that weekend was I was a rarity where we did two new venues in the same weekend. So those are the biggest mystery shows, the new venue. Last year we played Vinegar Hill and we had fun. So we're going back. The Colonial Theater in Pittsfield, we're friends with Rev Tor. He's got a large part in helping to get us in there. So at this point, the places we go back, they know we're old and in our ways.
Do you have in your role a relationship with like Scott Morelski's guitar rig and his pedals and all that stuff? Are you also involved in the setup and just making sure all that's correctly wired and on stage the right way?
Yeah, the way it kind of works out so far, Steve kind of deals with John's bass rig. I end up with Scott's guitar rig and Mark's keyboard rig. And the drummers mostly set up their own stuff. We'll help out with some of the heavier stuff. And, Steve can set up the keyboard and Steve can set up the guitar. But, all the guys are willing to help out with their own gear. So if everybody's running late or whatever, there's definitely a good amount of working together. It's the same guy, so their gear is the same show to show, unless it's a super small stage where we're taping microphones to the wall like we had to do at Thunder Road in Boston one time. Just one microphone we had to tape to the wall. It was fine. The living room, we used to throw microphones over the fire sprinkler pipes and hang them down over the drums.
So there's a level of creativity or innovation that helps you out in this role.
There is. And, then the band's been innovative. They built their own sound systems in the 70s, Quack Sound. John Ryder runs his own PA company, so he's always fiddling with new gear. Morawski, he does it, he's had not as many gear changes as John Ryder, but there's been a good variety of pedals and speakers Scott's used. We don't really have a huge road crew or any, it's me and Steve and occasionally a helper or two, but, like some bands have 12 guys on their road crew and they can all the time in the world. We show up to a venue, hope everything works, and try to set everything up in 3 hours.
Well, Mike, on behalf of all the fans, I want to say thank you.
Yeah, no, it's fun. It's a good time with it. And without the fans, there's boring shit. I've been to a Max Creek rehearsal. Let me rephrase that. I've slept through a Max Creek rehearsal.
Oh, jeez.
The energy level is completely different between watching them in an empty room and in a full room where they're feeding off the fans. Our fans, you all know you smoke pot. Sometimes you're too high. And you will be on stage like, God damn. And you can see it in the band's like, we just ripped through this crazy fucking awesome song and like ghosts. And it's just like the reality is some venues are way more pot friendly than others. Harry's Farm in Maine, this would happen a lot of times. Like the crowd would be too high, like 10 edibles deep. And it's just like, it's tough to play to a crowd that's on 10 edibles and just like really stoned. Just saying, like a good, happy, loud drunk is sometimes better than a really stoned crowd. But then other times when they're playing really quiet songs, you don't really want that drunk crowd. So I can go any which way, and the band tries to read off that energy.
What are some of your favorite Max Creek songs?
I love Mark's songs, and he hasn't written a lot, but the ones he writes are friggin' great. So I love Said and Done, King of California. I'm not, some of his songs, I'll be honest, I'm not the most informed Max Creek member on who wrote what songs and stuff. So sometimes I'll realize that, holy shit, that's a cover. But I heard it first through Creek and they play it so well. Sometimes like that's their song. It's not that other person's. Said and Done, I know Mark wrote. King of California, I don't know why I'm thinking somebody else wrote it right now.
Yeah, that's a cover, yeah.
But I fucking love when he does it. Like I said, the first time I ever heard it was Mercier. And I was like, he nails it. It's his song. In all honesty, I'm awful with song titles. So at the end of a show, I will look for the audience set list to see what the hell they played. So I'm paying attention. I'm not trying to remember things.
Well, I would imagine over the years you've seen a number of bands and musicians interact with each other, and you've had this sort of front row seat to Max Creek. Talk to me about the chemistry you see between these band members and what you see from your vantage point.
I can hear the snide jokes and the funny jokes sometimes. I can definitely see the glances, and I also see them not needing to look at each other to know what the hell is going on musically. They have a very tight bond. They're all good players, so there's a good chemistry there. People still wouldn't be showing up. I haven't seen Max Creek in 15 years, and they come back and they're back. It's 55 years to keep anybody going back to see you is crazy. So now we have grandkids and stuff coming, and it's a good vibe. So the chemistry is there. Like if they weren't friends, it wouldn't be as enjoyable.
I have just a great amount of appreciation for these fans, these Creek freaks, right? How do you view the fan base of Max Creek?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Who do I want to piss off today? So being stuck behind the stage, let me preface it by saying, most of the time, as far as individual people go, I only notice you if you're kind of a dumbass, for the most part, because I'm backstage. So for like the news of some stupidity or something, I tend to hear about more than like the awesome fan who's just chilling. So if I'm hearing about a fan, it's possibly because they did something stupid or you had an incident or threw up in the middle of the floor because they're all shit faced, or we got this one venue who's like, well, you guys can't play here anymore because somebody was fucking in the bathroom. So I mean, that's the type of shit I have to deal with as the road manager as well. It's like, so and so was fucking in the bathroom. We can't have you guys here anymore. Or somebody was throwing bottles in the parking lot. But overall, so one of the venues we used to play was Eastover, and Eastover was Rev Tor, our buddy. He hooked us up with this venue. It was like a 200-acre Civil War museum / bed and breakfast in Lenox, Mass. And that shit was crazy. We just took over the whole 200 acres. So it was like 300 creek freaks stuck on one property for 3 days with the pool, buffets, music till 6 a.m. It was fucking awesome. So those events were cool. I started to, meet a few more people when I wasn't necessarily working all the time. And then with, Wormtown and Strange Creek Festival, through the creek, I've had a few people help volunteer, and they surprised the hell out of me with the quality of effort and hard work they could put in. So, I've been surprised by some of the crazy looking fucking people in the crowd by how hard they can work. And, they all seem to confuse me at times, the good and the bad. But it seems that creek is a place where people can let their freak flag fly. And they fly it, man. I'm like, I'm part of the freaks, and I'm still like, holy shit, that person's out there. But creek's a nice safe space where people can come and have a good time and do that type of shit. Then have a designated driver to get them home.
Well, I think Max Creek is a legendary band. I mean, this is why I've done this podcast and invested this many years just talking about the band.
Yeah, the only reason you got me on this goddamn thing because I read that you were going to stop. I was like, son of a bitch. I guess I should do it.
That is true. I'm getting near the end, and I have asked you, Mike, a couple times to do this, so I'm glad something worked to get you on the podcast. But this band, I think, is historic. What is it like for you to be part of their journey, part of what makes Max Creek who they are? What does that feel like for you?
I mean, it's been going on for so long, kind of just feels like normal. It is a bit of family. Like, there's blood family and there's family you choose to not leave. And this has been a good mixture of family and been great for work. I mean, shit, find a better job where you can go hang out, see music. I now have kids. The Creek, for me, with the kids, they don't play a lot. So it's good. I can still see my kids, which is same reasons they kind of slowed down in the 90s. Everybody had family and kids and whatever. So it's pretty cool. They are definitely a family vibe. If I fuck my job up, they're still going to fire me. So I try not to, but, it's a good vibe for having a bunch of people to work with. Shit, I've seen, I started out with All's House on drums. Then we had Greg Vasso. And then we had the Googs and Vasso, I think. No, it was All's House and Vasso for a while. So, I've had like 3 or 4 drummers, a couple percussion players, 3 different sound guys, multiple light guys, crew. I've met a bunch of crew from the years and still go to shows. So even the people who are no longer working for the band, I don't see too many people who are pissed that they did. I haven't yet to find a person who's pissed they went to a Max Creek show. So it's a party. They still do it.
Well, Mike Maresca, thank you so much for supporting Max Creek and for working for the band. And thank you for being on the Hooked on Creek podcast. I had a lot of fun talking with you.
Yeah, no problem, Corey. It's great.
All right. Take care.
Thank you, buddy. Till next time.
Huge thanks to Mike Maresca for joining me on the podcast and sharing his perspectives on working for Max Creek. The next time you see Mike at a show, please tell him thanks for everything he does to support the band and their live performances. If you're curious, this episode featured a clip of Max Creek performing the song Said and Done live at Sterling Stage in Hannibal, New York, back on September 3rd, 2016. That concludes episode 66 of Hooked on Creek. If you have feedback about this episode, please visit hookedoncreek.com and click the contact link to send me a message. I would love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in.